Hi guys, and welcome back to D&DGaming. In for review this time around is Railway Empire building game, Railway Empire. Reviewing this game with me is my brother Dale.
Hi guys, welcome back to D&DGaming. Railway Empire is a rail tycoon simulation game developed by Gaming Mind Studios and published by Kalypso Media. It was released in 2018 for Linux, Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and in 2020 for Nintendo Switch. Railway Empire's base game takes place in the United States from 1830 to 1930. The player can build a large network of railway lines and buy various locomotives to serve cities and industries, growing cities in the process. You can also hire railway personnel for both train operations and office positions, all with individual bonuses and personality types. You can also unlock innovations such as new locomotives or bonuses to revenue. As of 2021, the game has 10 DLC available, which include expansions such as Mexico, Great Britain and Ireland, and Japan. So Daph, what were your first impressions of the game?
I was really looking forward to playing and reviewing this game. I'm not a Railway fan as such, but I like the look of this since I first saw the trailer in 2018. And really the first impression is a sort of tycoon type micromanaging game focused on reliving the building of the railways across America at the height of the railway expansion in the US. What were your first impressions?
So I'm actually a train spotter myself in real life. So this was just right up my alley. Only joking, guys. No offense to actual train spotters out there, but yeah, I'm not. So first impressions, rail tycoon simulation game where the objective is to expand and dominate, managing the railway network and kind of developing business and beating the competition. I think I'd first seen this in 2018 and actually really wanted to get it at the time, but I think it's mostly the price that put me off when it first came out. I believe it was £40 or $50 or so, quite expensive, so I didn't buy it at the time, and it just so happens picked it up fairly recently for free on the Epic Games Store. So it's been one I've wanted to play since 2018, so really looking forward to it.
General thoughts following playthrough. It's a fairly deep game, especially considering it's also a console game and doesn't look particularly in-depth from the outset. Track building was really good with lots of flexibility and ways you can adjust the track alignment, but I found the game could be really frustrating at times, in fact probably most of the time.
Yeah, I like the fact that you go straight into the action and you're kind of against the clock almost immediately. Certainly in the campaign mode, it gets straight into it. There's no separate tutorial and it slowly introduces the gameplay mechanics as you go through. But as I talk about later, I did find that you quite quickly up against the time and it doesn't give you much time to actually settle into it. It's kind of all go, 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 but not a huge negative. But just the kind of game that I initially thought I'd be able to kind of relax into, but it didn't really turn out like that.
In terms of graphic options, not many, just details, texture detail, terrain detail, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very limited graphic options, as you said, and out of those basically three options, it's just either low or normal. There's no high setting even. Didn't necessarily find it an issue given the nature of the game, but yeah, perhaps expected a few more graphic options.
In terms of graphic performance, we'll put the PC specs up on screen as usual, but for me, it ran like wet shit off a shovel on my PC, so no problems to speak of graphically, really. Graphics themselves aren't great for a 2018 game, but pleasing enough to the eye, I suppose. Train models looked pretty detailed, and the environment is suitably detailed. Quite cartoony looking graphics in the menus and the UI.
Yeah, I had everything on, normal. I'd effectively had it on the highest settings, ran very smooth, no issues whatsoever, actually. In terms of the kind of style of the graphics, quite basic. But again, these management tycoon type games, there's a lot going on and a lot to process. So given the nature of the game, there was good detail. When you zoom in, there was some good detail on the trains themselves. Yeah, it did have that slightly cartoonish look, especially to the characters that pop up. But yeah, I did like the fact that you can zoom almost right down to street level, and see people going about their business and zoom in on the station platforms even. So yeah, I really like the graphics in it.
In terms of player control options, it's keyboard and mouse. You can't rebind your keys, not that I necessarily found that problem at all. And there are options for a controller, obviously, because it's a console game as well.
Yeah, I used keyboard and mouse. It was strange, there's no key bindings, hotkeys, or shortcuts as such. Apparently these do exist. I read you have to kind of find them in the guide, as I found in the tips and tricks menu, for instance, it didn't actually have all the key bindings in there. Apparently you can use the shift key to force a train to use a specific terminal at a station, which was something while playing it, would have been really good to know, because that was one of my frustrations at times. But no, it's not actually mentioned anywhere. I found out the shift key one from one of the Steam reviews. So I'm kind of surprised to find there wasn't a better guide as to the actual options. There's no references to the key bindings at all, apart from in the tips and tricks menu, and that doesn't cover all of them anyway. I do kind of feel like that, especially with rebinding the keys, that's it's kind of day one of developing the game, surely. It's such a simple thing to include, and I think there's really no excuse for it, or at least in terms of what keys to use, have a short tutorial on that. Not great from a kind of control options point of view.
In terms of game mechanics, the game is based around a map dispersed with multiple cities and local resource locations, such as farms, timber yards and coal mines. Cities run on a supply and demand basis. You set up railways that connect the cities to local resources and keep the cities topped up with the supplies that are constantly depleting. Keep the city stocked up well and the city will grow in terms of population and businesses. Connect cities together to further bolster the growth. You'll set a number of tasks to complete within each campaign within a set time frame, with additional optional tasks if you wish to complete them. There are 30 different types of cargo to transport, using 40 different train models that unlock as you go along, and these get progressively better as you go through the game. Each train can have up to 4 staff that, if fully staffed, will maximise your train's profits and overall performance. As you build your train network, you place signals and side tracks to control the speed and crossing over the trains on the network. You can buy and sell businesses located in the cities, and these are unlocked as the population grows to particular levels. You can also buy the rural businesses. However, I did find what you can do with the businesses themselves to be quite limited, other than, of course, reaping the profits from them. You can buy shares in your competitor's company and even liquidate them completely if you want to, which is quite satisfying after they've been annoying the shit out of you for the last 2 hours.
My spy brought me a real treat from your research department.
In terms of game modes, the game has 5 main game modes, which are campaign mode, scenario mode, free mode, sandbox mode, and challenge mode. The campaign mode mainly takes the player through the building of the first transcontinental railroad, the exception being Mission 4, which is based around the American Civil War. In this mode, the player must fulfill tasks as well as competing with AI-controlled competitors. In the scenario mode, there are 11 different scenarios. These competitors are selectable and playable characters with specific gameplay bonuses. The tasks are also considerably harder in scenario mode. In free mode, the task list is randomly generated upon startup and the tasks given are not compulsory. Players can also choose how many competitors they have, between 0 and 3, and allows far more flexibility and options for number of competitors. There are also options for AI level, starting city, and the advanced settings push this even further into construction cost adjustments, servicing cost adjustments, to really control how easy or hard the game will be. Sandbox mode has no tasks and all locomotives are automatically researched. There are also no competitors and money is infinite. Challenge mode is similar to scenarios and free mode, but players compete with other players on an online leaderboard.
In terms of perks, upgrades, unlockables, you can unlock train add-ons, additional trains and more by earning innovation points and spending these on upgrades. There are a total of 300 different technologies to research.
Yeah, I did find it was very deep research options, by way of that kind of skill tree is how they implement it. You see it kind of going off with the different options. And then I realized, you can almost like swipe across to see more, and it's almost never ending at first. And even in the 20 plus hours I played so far, I certainly haven't got to a point where I've researched all of them. because I think it depends on the particular scenario or campaign that you're doing. Yeah, I was impressed by the amount of research options in there, to be honest.
In terms of sound, I thought the train sound effects were really good. Bloody annoying voice actors though. I felt they were far too stereotypical and really irritating.
Yeah, I agree. The sounds for the trains, like the signals and the ambient sounds were great. But yeah, the voice actors were just, it just didn't really do it for me. They were either, like you say, kind of a bit too stereotypical or just annoying.
What are you doing with this station here? I'm already here.
Also, if I'm being critical, the voice acting wasn't great in some places. Bearing in mind this is obviously set in the United States, I did find a couple of the voiceovers noticeably had a foreign accent, which when I looked into it, I see the developer is based in Germany, and I did hear on a couple of the voiceovers a slight, almost German twang to the accent, which in of itself is not so much an issue. It just felt like, if you're going to base it in the US, and at least get US voice actors.
Yeah, it kind of breaks that immersion of the game if you've got voice actors that don't really fit the scene as such. In terms of background music, I thought the music was really good and kind of the time, fit well with the game. But I think there could have been more variety.
Yeah, I thought the music was appropriate for the game, especially in the menus, but nothing that really stood out in terms of the music.
In terms of bugs and glitches, I didn't find any. Ran like a wet shit.
No, I didn't have any bugs or glitches at all. It ran really well.
So to sum up, things I liked about the game, track building is great. And once you figure out how it works, it's really simple to lay the tracks exactly how you want. And there's a lot of adjustment that you can do to those tracks, adding points, pulling the track around, pulling up and down vertically to add tunnels, or lifting it up to add bridges and things. And also it's useful to play around and keep the cost down in terms of how much that track's going to cost you to lay down. The onboard view with the trains was really cool. I thought the game had huge replayability within the game modes. There's a lot of content in there and certainly has that replayability about it. And with the DLCs, there's loads more trains, resources, maps, and are set in other world locations such as the UK.
Yeah, I also really liked the ride-along feature. I thought that was a nice touch. It was probably a few hours in until I realised you could do that. And it's not something I use that much, but it was a nice touch, and you could change the camera angle, and it was just added that extra detail. Yeah, just really well implemented. Yeah, it is a very large game. You've got those numerous different play modes, loads of DLC available. So yeah, as you say, definitely plenty of replayability. Yeah, and also just really liked how the campaign mode took you through various stages, from the beginnings of the railways in the US, not right through, but certainly, some of the key points in the history of the railways.
In terms of things I didn't like about the game or found annoying, it was too fast in terms of its progression. I feel like this could have been slowed down some way to make the timescales more appropriate to the timescales of the railway building in the US. I mean, not literally, obviously, but this could have been done through something like track and building construction, and city growth timeframes could have been slowed a little bit. The competitors are irritating in terms of voicing, and the fact that they are constantly sabotaging your trains and stealing your train staff and your upgrades and stuff, which gets quite annoying. At one point, I had a complete network of trains just grind to a halt, where they were just waiting for one another to move. I had about 10 trains, and no matter what I did, including laying extra track for them to move on to, pass each other, changing signals around. They just sat there locked up. I think there could have been more help to have come from the game to indicate where the problem was and how to resolve it. I mean, you can just delete trains and take them off the track, but I didn't really want to do that. I'd rather actually find the way to resolve it, or for the game to actually say, well, this is where it's all caught up, and so this is what you need to do to sort this situation out.
Yeah, I did find it was quite a time sink, to be honest. I mean, again, to some extent, this is personal, but you don't have to sit there and play it for hours like I did. I just found that once I got into it, I was like, right, I'll just do the next task. And then you'd be like, oh, maybe, it won't be that long until I complete this campaign. Whereas actually, it's one of those games where you feel like you've played for just a few minutes and it's been like hours. Which is both good and bad, but yeah, I did find the way the campaigns were, the tasks were done, they were almost a little bit kind of dragged out at times, so you'd be thinking, right, do this next one, and then a load more tasks come up. I did also find there were at times too many of the kind of pop-ups. There's points where you're concentrating on something very specific, whether that's a task or you're just, laying out the track, connecting up. And again, like you say, it's fast-paced. You're very much like focused on what you want to do, and there's just so many different pop-ups. The competitors are saying stuff, and you've got the newspapers coming up. It was actually just winding me up. I just immediately clicking off them and just being like, go away. Although that being said, they can be disabled in the options menu. I'm kind of shame I didn't realise that earlier on, to be honest, because they did really wind me up at times. I did find the UI could do with some improvement. So for example, the management of the trains themselves. If you wanted to find a specific train, and as you go through the campaign, you can have a lot of trains going back and forth. And once it gets above about 10 or so, you're having to scroll through an entire list just to find a specific train. So at one point I had a specific route that I wanted to set out. I needed to find a specific train, and I was like scrolling through the list, and at that point I was quite fine. I had something like 60 trains because I'd bought out one of the competitors as well, and it was just ridiculous trying to find that specific train. So I think there could have been a better kind of UI in place for that. I didn't like the slightly cartoonish look to the characters. I almost felt it felt like it was almost aimed at kids with the way the characters were done, and just kind of over the top, which was a shame. It was fast paced to the point of just being hard to keep up with at times. It was just like overload. Tasks can be hard to keep up with, and actually finishing them in the time given can be quite frustrating, because you do feel like you're rushing through all those tasks. And I think, like you said, it'd be nice if they just slowed it down a bit. So I don't feel like why they need to rush you so much. It's a game where, it needs to be a challenge, obviously, but I just felt like instead of taking the time to lay out a nice track system and get the tracks to all the different cities, you're just so focused on the task, because you're like, right, I need to focus on that, because I need to do that before the end of this year, otherwise you're just done. It kicks you out of the game effectively, because as soon as you fail one of the main tasks, that's it. You've got to either load a save or restart that campaign.
In terms of where I think they missed a trick, or things I would have liked to have seen, track building in the game was one of the best bits, in my opinion. But I feel that the track building could have been shown far better by actually seeing people laying the track, rather than just clicking on a dollar symbol to install it immediately. You've gone to all that time of laying your track a particular way and getting it to the cost that you want to get it to, putting bridges where you want them, tunnels where you want them, and then it's just a click of a dollar sign to sort of install it. And I think that could have been drawn out a bit more, and that comes back to my point of slowing the game down a little bit. And I think it would have been quite cool to see a sort of group of workers sort of sent out from the station station, laying the track. And I think the same with buildings and things as well in the cities, kind of like you would see in SimCity or Tropico games. And I also think it lacked multiplayer mode as well.
Yeah, I agree on the multiplayer. It would have been nice to see that implemented, and instead of having these annoying AI you're against, actually have, go against other people. Yeah, and generally, I just feel like they should have just slowed the whole thing down. It just feels like it's rushing you through the campaign, and you're just focusing on very specific tasks that mean you almost have to ignore everything else, and so it would have been nice to see him just slow the pace down a little bit. I would have just enjoyed it a little bit more, rather than the few times that I rage quit because it just wound me up.
In terms of scores, Dale, what do you think?
So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. I did ultimately really enjoy the game, and it's one that I feel I will come back to. I'd like to try some of the DLC. And yeah, really did enjoy it for the most part. How about you?
I think it's got a lot of replayability, but there were so many things that bugged me in the game, and that tended to be more than the enjoyable elements of the game, which really kind of marred my playing experience and just left me frustrated, really, rage quitting every 5 minutes. Therefore, reflecting on this, I'm going to give the game a 7 out of 10. Okay, people, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment, and we'll see you in the next one.